All right, in the last demonstration, I showed you how to set up an empty database and assign database user privileges to use it. So the next step, now that we have our files in the file system, we have our database created, what we need to do is we need to match those up by going through the installation process, or I should call it the automated installation process for WordPress. So what you're going to do is go to a web browser and go to your subdomain. Um, in this particular semester, it's matmcc.org is the main domain, and your last name would be the first part of the subdomain. In some other semester, the actual domain name might be a little different. But anyway, go to your subdomain, and what you're going to do is go to the folder for your WordPress installation and click on it. All right, and it should load an automated page. And let me just show you what it's doing first of all. All right, really quickly, I'm going to just quickly jump over to the cPanel, and I'm going to go to the file manager. I'm going to show you something. You don't have to do this, but just watch what I'm doing, okay, so that you can understand what's happening. I'm going to go into my public folder, and then if I go into my WordPress folder, which is SD Places, what you're going to see is a whole bunch of stuff. But if you were to look here, down in here, you'll see that right now, I had mentioned this before, all we have is a wp config sample.php file. We don't actually have something called wp config. And what's happening is that WordPress recognizes that we have not yet created a wp config file. Right now it's just in the sample form. And so it automatically knows when it looks at this index page, it has a whole series of different things that it goes through, these steps that it goes through. And it sees that there's no WP config file. And so what it'll do is here, let me jump over here. What it does is it goes ahead and it starts loading the beginning of the default setup. And the reason I'm kind of showing you all of this different series of process steps is because every once in a while, like later, if your database gets messed up or you delete it, but your WP config file is actually still there, you might end up having like all these different kinds of errors. All right. So, but anyway, let me show you the way that this works, so that you kind of have a better understanding of it. So essentially what it's doing is it loads this index.php page. It goes through a series of basically checks, and it sees that there's no file that's called wp-config.php. All we have is a sample. So it sends us, here, let's just move that over. It sends us here. So I'm going to go ahead and click continue. And it tells me, all right, what I need to get started is I need my database name, that empty database. I need my database username. I need my database password. I need the name of the database host, right? All four of these first things we have. And then it also says table prefix. I'm going to explain what the table prefix is in just a second. All right, so right now I see it says let's go. Now this part right here, if you're doing this on your own computer, like if you're doing this on your development server, I'll do a separate tutorial that kind of goes through that process because it's similar but it's different. This is specifically kind of for people who are doing it on their development servers. Rarely are you going to have access to a special set of hosting where you don't have the permissions to make modifications or read and write different files. Now, let's say that you're trying to install this on a server at your workplace. Like maybe your workplace has its own special servers that are not set up through like a third-party host like on GoDaddy or Media Temple or something like that, but maybe it has its own special servers where there are system administrators who, configure the servers. Well, in that case, you might also run into this issue where maybe they don't allow certain kinds of read and write privileges for directories. So that could be the case too. But typically with servers like GoDaddy and the standard kinds of hosts like Media Temple and GatorHost and Bluehost and things like that, you're not going to have this issue. Okay, so anyway, go ahead and let's say, let's go. We have all that stuff. And all right, now we get to this place and the the database name is not WordPress. You're going to need to change this. If you want to refer back to that little file that we had set up earlier, here's my file. You can just copy and paste some of the stuff. So the database name we said was in my case, student SD places. So I'll go here and I'll paste that. That's also the same as the username. So these two things in this case are the same. They're not always the same, but in this case they are the same. The password, let me copy that password, that crazy long password, and I'll paste it here, and it's going to show it in clear text. So if you're ever sitting in front of somebody and you don't want them to see your password, just know that this particular step is not going to show bullets. It's going to show the actual password. All right, and our database host in this case is localhost. All right, and where it says table prefix, don't leave it as this default. You want to change this because for security reasons, people who are hackers who want to hack WordPress installations, they will specifically target prefixes for the tables that get generated for this installation as WP underscore, because that is the default that's here. And if you were just click submit right now, all the tables that get written would be written with this prefix. So what I would recommend is that you have a custom prefix. You could either do, you know, like SD places or SD or something like that. Sometimes I won't name the prefix the same name as my database. So in this case, let's just, I'm going to call mine SD. I'm not going to do it as SD places. So I'll say SD underscore. Leave that underscore there, and I'll show you why later, but don't get rid of that underscore. That's kind of going to be extremely useful for you to see why that's helpful later. All right, so now I've got all of this stuff, and before I continue, I'm going to copy where it says table prefix. I'm going to jump back over here, and I'll just add table prefix like this, and I'll put that right there. So I know what it is, okay? I'm going to click on submit, and it says, all right, you've got through this part of the installation. So basically what it did just now was it tested my connection to the database, and it confirmed that in fact it was a good connection and it would work. It's saying that now WordPress can communicate with the database, and it's ready to install. I want to show you something really quickly. If we were to jump over here to our PHP admin, and I click on this again to refresh it, you can see that it still has no tables, okay? Just so you can see at which points the tables actually get created. I'm going to click on run the install. All right, again, I'm going to jump over here to PHP my admin. I'm going to click on the database to refresh it. Still, no tables have been generated yet, okay? So this is actually really helpful, okay, to understand a little bit about that process. And if you don't, you know, file all this away in your head and remember all of it later, you can always come back and refer to this again in the future if you need to troubleshoot or something. So right now, what it's asking before it does its full setup is it's saying, hey, what do you want to call this website? Well, I'm going to call it, let's say, Places of San Diego or something like that. All right, you can always come back and change this later through the WordPress backend once we get it installed and set up. So don't worry if you don't really know exactly what you want to call it yet, but you can just call it whatever right now to get started. The username, don't use something like admin or administrator. Those are some of the most commonly used names for the administrator account, and that is again another thing that hackers will target. They will try to name it admin or administrator to try to hack into your WordPress installation. So name it something that's a little bit more unique. So I'm going to just name it, for me, I'm going to name it L. Cotner, all right, or just whatever, name it your name or something, I don't know, whatever. So I'm going to use that. And it tells you can't use a lot of special characters. You can't use all these things, right? So, and then it tries to auto-populate your password. Now, you might look at this and go, whoa, wait a second. I thought I already made a username and password for my database. Okay, well, this is where sometimes people get super confused. All right, you got to understand that this is a little bit different. All right, so the username for the database that we made before and the password for that, those were usernames and passwords that were part of the MySQL service. All right, the username and password that you're making right now is for this specific installation of WordPress. All right, so this WordPress website is going to have its own special set of tables that keep user information stored in it. All right, whereas the other username that we made prior to this and the second step of this tutorial was specifically part of the MySQL service so that it would create a database user and so it could have access to use an entire database. Right now, as part of this database, it's going to create a table with user information for this particular WordPress installation. So this is separate, okay? So you could go ahead and, I wouldn't use, by the way, I wouldn't use the same password here. Because remember, again, this password I told you is going to get stored in a file, and I'll show you where that is later, but it's going to get stored in a file, so you definitely don't want to have it sitting in some file, right, so that somebody could use it to get into your WordPress installation in a separate kind of way. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and go back to my password generator over here. And because I don't particularly like to have all those weird characters, I'm going to go ahead and create some other password. You can create whatever password that you would like. But anyway, I'm going to click generate password. I'll copy this down and I'll come back over here and I will paste it. And it still says it's strong, so that's good. And I'm going to copy this and I'm going to create this information over here so that down below I will put WordPress installations main user info, okay, or main user account info, for instance, okay. And for that I will say it's L. Kottner for the username. Let's do this, user, and password would be this weird password right here, okay? All right, and then the email address that you are going to give it is going to be your email address, because that way if you ever lose your password, you can always do a password reset and it will email you something in your email so that it allows you to reset your password. I'm going to suggest that for the sake of this being your project for this class, I'm going to ask you to discourage search engines from indexing the site. Later, you can always change this setting. So if you try to use search engine optimization tools, you will have to change this, but you can easily change it in the back end of WordPress. So I'm going to go ahead and click Install WordPress. Now, what it did was it actually created all these tables. All right, so I jump back over to phpMyAdmin. I am clicking to use that database, and then you see now that it has all of these different tables right here. And if I wanted to look at the information that's inside of the tables, you see, for instance, it has this thing called SD users. You'll notice that all of these have the prefix of SD underscore. That's where that prefix comes into play. All right, so all of these are common and default tables that will get made with every instance of a WordPress installation. And so that's why it's important to name the prefix something unique, so it's not just WP underscore. Anyway, let's look at the SD users table. I'm going to click it to use it. And you can see automatically that that's where it put that information for my user account that I just created called L. Kottner. And where it says pass, it looks like some crazy gobbledygook, right? Well, that's because it's encrypted. It stores it as an encrypted piece of information. And it's got more information, and it also tells me when I registered and so on and so on. Okay. Now, the other thing too that's really cool about phpMyAdmin is that look up here. This actually, just for those of you who are interested in this, some of you are just not going to care, but some of you actually are going to be really jazzed to know this. This is the actual command that is being sent down to the MySQL command line. So it's basically saying select, okay, all. This little asterisk is a wildcard that means everything. Okay, so select everything, and it says from, and it tells me which table to use. All right, so it's saying select everything from SD users, and then it's giving me something that's a limit, saying basically only give me up to 30 records. Well, we only had one, okay, but it would have only shown me 30 records at a time, and if I wanted to see more, I'd have to click through some pagination to get to the next set. Okay. The next thing I want to show you, let's just jump back over here to our installation, and it's a success and it says log in. So let's log in really quickly and make sure that everything's working. And I'll log in with that information that I had before and my password that's crazy. And it dropped me into this back end. All right, this is the administrative back end. And I'm just going to show you a few things. I'm not going to show you everything in this demonstration, but I will show you just a couple of things so that you can at least kind of see what's going on, right? So first of all, you'll notice that right up here, we've got our URL, and this is our root level directory of the installation. And then over here we have WP admin. This is always going to be the panel where you can go and log in. So for instance, if I got rid of that and I just go, here, this is the front end of my website, right? But if I want to get to WP admin, I would just type WP admin, and it will automatically take me here. And if you're not logged in, it'll take you to a login screen. Okay, so that's always a way that you know that you can get into the back end of your WordPress installation. Now, the first thing I just want to really quickly show you is, let's just go back, look up here in this black bar. This black bar is going to be persistent as long as you're logged in. And so what I would like to go ahead and show you here is that if you click on this, it'll take you to the front end of your website. And this is you'll notice that we're now no longer inside of the WP admin, right? We're just looking at it, but you still see that this bar is persistent up here. If we were to log out up here, then we would see the website without this bar, just like any other regular visitor to the website. Now, one of the things that you'll notice is that this is just some default theme that's being applied. It's nothing that I specifically selected. This happens to be the 2016 theme, and in some other semester you might see something different, like you might see 2017, or let's just go back here real quick to the dashboard so we can jump back in, and let's just look at themes really quick, and we'll switch it to 2015 from last year. So if we go over here to where it says appearance and we can choose themes, all right, this is where you can change your themes around, and it's amazing like how much a website can actually completely and totally change just by the theme that you choose. And we're going to get, like I said, into that more later, but let's just go to 2015 and let's just activate it, and then you can see it right off the bat. And now if we want to go back, and by the way, I could right click this and say open a new tab, so that way I do have my back end open as well as my front end open. Okay, and so this is how the 2015 theme looks. All right, and so if we wanted to just poke around in here just a little bit, I want to show you a couple of things. One is we've got this hello world post. I didn't put that there, right? This is some basic default content that comes with the WordPress installation. It's not that it comes with the theme, it comes with the entire WordPress installation. And you'll notice that even though I changed the themes, that the content specifically had not changed. It just sort of changed the way that it organized it visually. And that's a really important principle that you need to kind of keep in mind as we go forward with this. And we're going to get into this a lot more when we get into more customization and picking themes and so forth. And also in terms of how you're going to organize your content, we're going to talk a lot about that too. All right, so what I would recommend is, let's go back here and, well, let's just click around. So if you click right now, Places of San Diego, it takes you to the homepage. Right now is showing up as a blog. It's got this one single post. If I click on the post, it takes me to the full post. And then I also have some comments that you'll notice are there for that post. And if I, wanted to look around here, you'll notice that there are no places for pages here. And if you go back into the dashboard, you would be able to see that there's some other things where we've got that post. If I just quickly look, you see there's that hello world post. And if I look at pages and posts are a little different. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes, but you'll see that we've got sample page. Well, sample page didn't show up anywhere. And so anyway, that can kind of tell you that some themes are going to hide certain kinds of content in different ways, depending on how you structure it. Okay, so a couple other things that I want to show you too is, we have very little content here. We can't, it's really hard for us to see what's going on with it. And so one of the best ways to test your themes, and you might as well just go ahead and put this one plugin in before you do kind of anything else. And if you go over here down below where it says plugins, you can look at installed plugins, or you can also say add new. Let's just look at the installed plugins for right now. And you heard me mention in a previous tutorial something about Akismet and Hello Dolly, and Hello Dolly is kind of dumb, I think, so you could delete that if you want. Akismet, I'm not going to activate it in my tutorial, but like I said, it's a spam thing. So, but there is one that I do want to suggest that you add right at the beginning, and click on add new up here, or you could click it here. And up here where it says search plugins, I want you to type WP example content. Okay, and what this is going to find is a plugin for you that is excellent in giving you content that you can easily enable or disable. So click on install now, and I always like to have this handy because if you let's see, let's jump back over here really quick where it says installed plugins. Actually, you can activate it directly from here now if you want. Anyway, but let's jump back over here. So you could have activated it or deactivated it from here. And what this is going to do is it provides multiple examples of posts and pages to assist with styling and developing new and current themes. This is going to be critical for you to have something like this because you're not going to have a bunch of content already developed, and it's really hard for you to imagine all the different things that you might need. So you can use this, you can activate it to turn it on, deactivate it to turn it off. And if you come down here, you'll see that WP example content placed something underneath all of these settings kinds of tools. So if you click over here, you'll see that it gives you some choices, and what you want to do is just go ahead and say add bundle of sampled posts. And what's great is that it adds them, right? And then at any time you want to get rid of them, you just come here and you click on remove all sample posts, and it doesn't, it's not like pulling teeth to get them to go away. Some of the other automatic dummy content generators will add stuff that make it really hard to get rid of it later. So, and this one's really good because it's really easy to make it go away. So if you look over here under posts again, you'll see that now there's a ton of different stuff. Same is going to be true with pages. And you see there's a lot of different stuff. We'll go into this later, but I just want to show you really quickly now. If we go and we visit our Places of San Diego page, then you see that now we've got a whole bunch of different content, and you can get a better sense of what the website's going to look like. All right, so this is a good thing to have to start with. Let's just really quickly jump back, and I want to show you just a couple other things before we conclude this. All right. So some other things too that you might want to do right off the bat is go under settings, and you can take a peek around here. And this is where I told you, you could change the site title. So I could, change this to like my favorite places or something. It's really kind of a terrible title, but whatever. This is also another place where you could adjust your tagline. Your tagline is going to be something that doesn't show up in all themes, but it will show up in some of them. I'm going to leave it just like this so you can see in the currently selected theme how annoying it would be if you didn't change it, right? So, but this is something that you should go ahead and definitely change just in case it does show up in your theme. And then you've got the WordPress address, you've got the site URL. These are things that you really don't want to necessarily change, okay? And then you want to put your email address, and you don't ever want to do anyone can register, and new default role is subscriber. That's for safety. And anyway, you can look at some of these settings. All right, you can save the changes at the bottom. And then you can look at some of these other choices. I'll get to this later, this writing. And then if we go to reading, I will also talk about this later as well, but basically, if you're looking at something that the front page is displaying your latest post, then basically it's showing your blog page. If you wanted to set a static page, like if you clicked on this, you could choose some specific page if you wanted, all right? So I'll just leave it at that. And the other thing I'm going to go over here and take a look at is actually, let's just skip over that for now. I want to look at permalinks for right now. So right now it's choosing day and time as the way that it's going to set my my URL rewrites up. And as you can kind of see from here, what a URL rewrite is going to do is it takes the basic, which is this method right here, where it puts a query mark or a question mark right here, and then followed by a key and value pair where it's saying, okay, well, let's go to SD places, and then the question mark is like saying where the post is equal to the ID of 123. For instance, that's just an example, right? Well, this is not very search friendly, search engine friendly, and it's not very human friendly. And so there are these other ways that that WordPress wants to rewrite the URLs or the addresses in a more meaningful way so that they're easy to remember, they're easier to bookmark, and they're easier for search engines to search. And there are some different methods that you could look at doing this, an approach. But I'm going to recommend that you change it to post name. Post name is going to be one of the best ones for being able to have good searchability. You can also do custom stuff, but I'm not going to recommend that. So you're going to change to post name and click on Save Changes. And then if you wanted to go and just really quickly see how that looks up here, if we go to Visit Site, okay, notice what happens up here in the URL. Whenever I click on this, you see that it takes the name of the post. It's called the slug, and it puts the slug up here. So, and then if I wanted to go to links post, you can see what it's doing here, as opposed to doing something where it puts a question mark and a bunch of gobbledygook at the end. Okay, so that's a really good thing to go ahead and set up in the very beginning whenever you get started, and especially because later you might use plugins that rely on this setting being like this. And kind of the last thing that I wanted to talk about, if we go back to the dashboard, just really quickly, is if you want to change your password, you can go over here to users and you can go to your profile. And this is where you can change your password at any time. And you'll scroll to the bottom here, and what you'll have to do where it says new password is you say generate password, and then you can type whatever you want. It wants you to generate something that's a strong password because so often people don't put good passwords in. But let's just put something in. I'm going to actually put the word password in. Okay, it's very weak. And you have to actually confirm the use of a weak password. I actually am not going to keep this, but I want to show you something. So if I update my profile and I go and I log out over here, okay, and let's say that I have forgotten my password, right? Well, I can go type something, and if it's not the right password, I'll just put something in. It's going to tell me it's not right. And then it'll ask me, did you lose your password? You can click, yeah, I lost my password. And then you can either put your username in there, or you can put your email address that you registered with it and say get new password, and it will email a confirmation link to you. Okay, and I went ahead and I logged into my email, and so it'll send you this email, and you can click this link down here, okay? And then it opens up in a new window, and it will let you reset it here, and this is where you would have to reset your password. Okay, now let's just say that I did reset it, and let's say that I forgot what it was, and for some reason it didn't actually allow me, for some reason it didn't allow me to do what's right here. And a lot of times what you're going to find is that it might happen whenever you're developing on your own local computer, like your own laptop or something, and your email service, maybe it can't get out of the router. Like it can't actually go to send you an email properly. And so I'm going to show you a way that you can actually get around. I'm not going to reset this. I just want to show you something. If you were to jump over here into your PHP My Admin panel, and if you don't remember how to get to that, you would have to go into your cPanel, and then you would go to PHP My Admin, and it would open this up for you. So this is only if you absolutely need to reset your administrator password because for some reason it's messed up or you can't get it, you don't remember it, and your email isn't sending to you. What you can do is go here where it says student SD places in my example, All right, and then I would click on SD users, and then I want to go and edit my record for this user account. So I'm going to click on edit, and right now I've got this crazy looking, where it says user pass, this crazy encrypted key, and I can't actually see what the password is, but I can reset it. And let me show you how to do it. I can't just type it out here. Let's just say that I wanted to reset it to something like 1Q, 2W, 3E, and then let's do capitalizations of that and some exclamation marks, okay? So let's say that this is the way I wanted to set it, okay? What I'd have to do is come over here under the function, and I would have to choose MD5. MD5 is the type of hash that is used for WordPress passwords. Okay, so if you want to reset a password, any user's password, and sort of force it through the database because maybe your email thing isn't working or something, then what you can do is come and type the pass in under user pass, and then you need to change the function to MD5 as the hash. And then you come down here and click on go. All right, and so now if I wanted to go back to my website, all right, let's go back here and let's try to log in again. So let's go to L. Cotner, and then I'm going to type that weird password that I just made. All right, and log in, and it should log in for me. Okay, and there it went. Okay, and the thing that's kind of nice is that if you were to go back and look at it in the database now, you'll see that again, it re-encrypted it. So if somebody else has access to look at this database, they can't like just look at your passwords in the clear. All right, so before we conclude, I just want to really quickly show you how easy it is to make changes to that plugin or to plugins. So if you wanted to mess around with this so that you sort of don't feel like that there are any high stakes, right? You can go over here to plugins, and I encourage you to do this kind of stuff before you actually are super committed to having things, because you're going to be less likely to want to fool with things once you've got everything installed that you actually want. So I would recommend messing around with something that doesn't matter. So if you go to plugins, and then you can come to your installed plugins, right? And then let's just say for this WP example content, before you deactivate it, just by the way, because I didn't show you this before, if you wanted to get rid of that stuff, let's say that we had actually developed our entire website, right? If you go over here to example content, right, you can remove all the sample posts that you had created, right? So now they're done. And now if you want to go back to plugins, you can actually deactivate it. If you deactivate it, before you remove the sample posts, then they're still going to stay there, right? So, and then if you delete this before you remove them, then you're going to have to reinstall it to get rid of them, just so you know. So like if I wanted to go and look at my posts now, you see that all those extra posts and all of those extra pages, and if you were to even go back and look at the media, that would be gone too. All right, and so if you ever are not using something and you really don't want to have a bunch of stuff in here, you can go ahead and delete it. So let's just deactivate it first. You have to deactivate something to delete it. You could delete it. And you saw how simple it was to add that. So you can always go back and add it. I just want to show you really quickly what the website looks like again, right? So you don't have all that nice full content. But I just want to show you how simple it is to add stuff and delete it before you have a lot invested in it, okay? And you will, by the way, want to reinstall that plugin that I just showed you how to delete if you deleted it, okay? All right, so for right now, that is going to conclude this tutorial, and the next one is going to be somewhat lengthy again, but it is incredibly important, and I don't want you to skip it. I know you might be eager to just like get rolling with this, but I don't want you to skip it because it explains to you the really important steps for backing your stuff up. This is one of the things that every semester, for as long as I've been teaching this kind of material, for years, students always have problems. After the class is over, they come back to me and say, hey, do you have my old WordPress stuff? Do you have my old database stuff? And the answer is going to be no. It is your responsibility to back this stuff up. And if you don't learn how to do it properly, you are going to go through the semester producing potentially really cool work. And if you don't back it up right, you will lose it forever. Okay. So anyway, you have to back up two components, the file system and the database, and I'm going to show you in the next set of demos how you can do that. In addition to that, I'm also going to talk about what the WP or WordPress core files are versus the custom WP files, and which ones are absolutely critical that you pay attention to so that you basically don't lose your site.